Fire fell from the sky, idols shattered, and a nation trembled, yet the same man who called down heaven would soon collapse under the weight of fear, running alone into the wilderness. Who was he? A prophet who confronted kings without a sword, who shut the heavens with a single sentence, who outran royal chariots, and who learned that the God of fire also speaks through a whisper. But before the miracle, before the mountain of fire, before the chariot of flames that would split the sky, there was a moment that changed everything, a moment when one man stood between a broken nation and the living God. Today, you are about to step into that moment, a story of power, despair, glory, and divine whisper, told like you've never heard it before. If you love biblical mysteries, epic storytelling, and the hidden battles behind the prophets, make sure you subscribe to Kingdom Stories, hit the like button, and share this video so more people can discover the truth behind the legends. Now, breathe deeply. What you are about to witness is not just history, it is the fire that still speaks. He called down fire from heaven, and the whole nation bowed in awe. Yet not long after, this same man collapsed under the weight of fear, begging God to take his life as he fled alone into the wilderness. He had stood before kings, silenced the prophets of Baal, and witnessed miracles few could imagine, but in the end, it was a gentle whisper that broke him open and healed him. This is Elijah, the prophet who shut the heavens, who outran horses across the plains of Israel, and who learned that the God of fire also speaks in quiet places. His story is more than a record of ancient events. It is a reminder that God raises ordinary people to extraordinary purpose, and that his voice remains stronger than any throne or idol. The sun beat fiercely upon the hills of Israel, turning dust into shimmering heat. Through that blazing landscape walked a solitary figure wrapped in a rough, weathered cloak. He carried no weapon, no guard, yet each step carried the weight of judgment for a nation that had traded the voice of God for the altars of Baal. Before him rose the palace gates of Samaria, magnificent yet shadowed by spiritual decay. As Elijah entered the ornate corridors, conversations died instantly. Ahab sat on his ivory throne, uneasy and restless, while Jezebel stood beside him, her stare cold and sharp as a blade. Elijah lifted his voice with steady authority. There will be no dew or rain these years except at my word. A tremor passed through the court. Jezebel's eyes narrowed, already planning revenge. Elijah turned and walked away as the sky cleared, sealing the coming drought. Following the Lord's guidance, he traveled east to the brook Chariot. Hidden among rocks and cliffs, Elijah became a witness to God's mysterious care. Ravens flew in each morning and evening carrying bread and meat. The cool water of the brook kept him alive, while the land beyond withered under the relentless sun. Yet even as miracles surrounded him, Elijah felt the heaviness of grief for Israel's spiritual collapse. Still, God sustained him until the stream itself shrank to a trickle and finally dried completely. When the last drop vanished, Elijah heard God's voice again. "Go to Zarephath. I have commanded a widow there to provide for you." He walked under the scorching sun toward the foreign city, questioning how God could use someone so unlikely. At the gate, he saw a weary woman gathering sticks, her thin child clinging weakly to her side. Elijah asked for water, and as she turned to fetch it, he gently added, "Bring me a piece of bread as well." Her voice trembled with despair. She had only a handful of flour and a little oil, just enough for one final meal before starvation. Elijah felt the weight of her hopelessness, but answered softly, "Do not be afraid. Make a small loaf for me first, then for you and your son. For the God of Israel says the flour and oil will not run out until rain returns." With trembling faith, she obeyed. The miracle unfolded quietly. The flour multiplied, the oil never failed, and hope returned to that desperate household. But soon a deeper tragedy struck. One morning, the widow's anguished cries shattered the calm. Her son had died in her arms. She confronted Elijah with raw grief. "Did you come to expose my sin and cause my son's death?" Her pain pierced him deeply. Unable to respond, Elijah carried the lifeless child upstairs to his room, laying him on his bed. Alone, he wept and prayed, pouring out his soul. "Lord my God, why bring sorrow to this woman who has shown me kindness?" Then he stretched himself over the boy and cried, "Lord, restore his life." Nothing happened. He prayed again, still silence. A third time he pleaded with desperate faith, and suddenly the child's breath returned. Elijah brought the living boy to his mother, who fell to her knees in awe, saying, "Now I know you are a man of God." Word of the miracle spread, but danger grew elsewhere. Ahab and Jezebel intensified their persecution of God's prophets. After 3 years of drought, the Lord told Elijah to confront Ahab again. On Mount Carmel, before a gathered nation, Elijah challenged the prophets of Baal. Each side would offer a sacrifice, and the God who answered by fire would be the true God. The prophets of Baal screamed and danced from morning till noon, cutting themselves in desperation, but there was no answer. Elijah rebuilt the Lord's altar, drenched it with water, and prayed simply. Fire fell from heaven, consuming everything, the sacrifice, the stones, even the water. The people cried, "The Lord is God!" The false prophets were removed, and Elijah prayed again until a small cloud in the distance announced the returning rain. Yet after such triumph, Elijah's spirit collapsed under Jezebel's threat. Terrified, he fled into the desert and begged God to let him die. Exhausted, he fell asleep beneath a tree. An angel touched him gently, providing food and water, then returned a second time. The journey is long. Strengthened, Elijah traveled 40 days to Mount Horeb. There in a cave he voiced his despair. Israel had rejected God, torn down his altars, killed his prophets. He felt utterly alone. Then came wind, earthquake and fire, but God was not in them. After the roaring chaos came a whisper, gentle and deep. In that stillness, God reminded Elijah he was not alone. 7,000 in Israel had remained faithful. Renewed, Elijah listened as God gave him new instructions for the future and sent him to find Elisha, the one who would continue his mission. Elijah stretched himself over the boy's cold and silent body, trying to cover that fading life with the warmth of his own. His voice, shaken yet full of fierce conviction, rose into the stillness of the room. "O Lord my God, I beg you, restore this child's life." But nothing moved. Nothing changed. The house remained wrapped in an aching silence, broken only by the faint rustling of the curtains as a soft wind passed through. Fear began to coil inside Elijah's chest, a quiet tightening that reminded him of his own human frailty. Still, he refused to surrender. Driven by a desperate faith that clung to God even when the world seemed empty, he stretched himself over the boy a second time. His words trembled but remained full of longing. "God of Israel, I know you are near. Bring this child back to life." Again, silence. No breath, no sound, only the weight of uncertainty pressing heavily against Elijah's heart. Yet determination rose within him. He had seen God work wonders in barren places and hopeless moments. So Elijah tried a third time. He cried out with a deep, soul-piercing passion, his voice echoing against the wooden walls and pouring into the heavens as if to break them open. "O Lord my God, hear the voice of your servant, restore this child's life." And then something beyond explanation happened. The stillness shifted. The child's chest lifted with a soft, steady breath. His eyelids fluttered, then opened slowly, as if he had merely been asleep. Warmth returned to his face. Life returned to his body. Elijah felt awe wash over him in a single overwhelming wave. Holding the child close, he hurried down the stairs and placed the boy, alive, breathing, warm, into his mother's trembling arms. The woman stared at her son, her eyes widening with disbelief before flooding with tears. She fell to her knees, overwhelmed by gratitude and reverence. Lifting her tear-stained face toward Elijah, she spoke words that echoed with truth. "Now I know you are truly a man of God, and that the word of the Lord in your mouth is truth." For Elijah, this moment was far more than a miracle. It was a confirmation, quiet but powerful, that God had been with him every step of the way, even through confusion, loss, and unspoken fears. The story traveled quickly from home to home, village to village, until all of Zarephath whispered about the God who raised the dead. Yet while faith blossomed in that humble home, darkness grew elsewhere. King Ahab and Jezebel continued their violent persecution of the Lord's prophets. The kingdom trembled under oppression and idolatry, and an even greater spiritual storm gathered on the horizon. Elijah could sense it. He felt God calling him back into the heart of a conflict that would determine the future of Israel. This time, he would not confront merely a king or a queen. He would challenge the gods they worshipped, in a battle that would echo through generations. As night fell, Elijah looked up at the vast sky. The air seemed to hum with divine purpose. God whispered to his spirit that the story was only beginning. The man who had just cradled a resurrected child would soon stand on a mountain before a nation whose heart hung in the balance. Elijah knew one truth with unwavering certainty. When God speaks, even death itself must bow. And with that certainty came strength to face what lay ahead. The sun rose the next morning, pale and harsh over a land cracked by drought. 3 long years had passed since Elijah had spoken the words that sealed the heavens. Every wind that swept across Israel carried the sound of suffering, empty fields, dry wells, hungry families. Elijah felt the weight of their pain as he walked the dusty road towards Samaria. His steps were steady, though his heart carried a mix of anticipation and gravity. With every mile, memories surfaced. The silence of Chariot, the miracle in Zarephath, the death and return of the widow's son. All of it had led to this moment. Along the road, a familiar figure appeared. Obadiah, Ahab's steward, a man loyal to God even within a corrupt palace. When Obadiah recognized Elijah, his eyes widened in shock and fear. He bowed quickly and asked, voice trembling, "Is it truly you, my lord Elijah?" Elijah answered calmly, "It is I. Go and tell your master that Elijah is here." Fear washed over Obadiah. He begged Elijah not to send him, terrified Ahab would kill him if Elijah disappeared again. But Elijah's voice was firm. "As the Lord Almighty lives, I will present myself to Ahab today." Trusting him, Obadiah left to deliver the dangerous message. Soon after, Ahab arrived with fury burning in his eyes. From a distance, he shouted, "Is it you, the troubler of Israel?" Elijah did not flinch. His reply cut through the air with clarity. "I have not troubled Israel. You and your father's house have, because you abandoned the Lord and followed Baal. Now summon all Israel to Mount Carmel, along with the prophets of Baal and the prophets of Asherah, who eat at Jezebel's table." Ahab accepted, and the stage was set for one of the greatest confrontations in Scripture. On the chosen day, crowds covered the slopes of Mount Carmel. Elijah stepped forward, his gaze moving across a divided nation. Faces tired, hearts confused, souls pulled between two beliefs. His voice rose, "How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. If Baal is God, follow him." Silence hung over the mountain. No one dared speak. Elijah then proposed a test. 2 bulls, 2 altars, 2 prayers. The God who answers by fire, he is God. The people agreed. The prophets of Baal began first, shouting and dancing from dawn until noon. Nothing happened, no fire, no voice, no sign. Elijah watched them with a blend of sadness and sharp truth. "Shout louder," he called. "Perhaps your God is deep in thought, or traveling, or asleep." In desperation, they cut themselves until blood flowed, but the sky remained silent. At last, exhausted, they collapsed. Now it was Elijah's turn. He rebuilt the Lord's altar with 12 stones representing the tribes of Israel. He dug a wide trench, then ordered water to be poured over the offering, not once, but 3 times, until everything was soaked and the trench overflowed. Lifting his eyes to heaven, he prayed with calm strength, "Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God and I am your servant. Answer me so these people will know you are turning their hearts back." At that moment, the fire from heaven had barely faded when Elijah witnessed yet another miracle. The flames not only consumed the sacrifice, but even dried up the seawater around the altar. A stunned murmur rippled through the crowd before hundreds of voices rose together in one overwhelming cry, "The Lord, He is God! The Lord, He is God!" In that moment, Elijah knew the people's hearts were turning back, but the work was not finished. He ordered the prophets of Baal to be seized and taken to the Kishon stream, where they were executed, cleansing the land from the corruption that had poisoned it for so long. Yet even as awe still lingered over Mount Carmel, Elijah sensed that God had one more sign to release: rain for a land aching with thirst. He climbed back to the top of the mountain, bowed with his face to the ground, and prayed earnestly. He sent his servant to look toward the sea, but there was nothing. Once, twice, 6 times, still nothing. But on the 7th time the servant cried out, "A small cloud, the size of a man's hand, is rising from the sea." Elijah smiled, knowing God was answering. Rain was coming to revive the parched soil and the weary spirits of Israel. Empowered by God, Elijah ran ahead of Ahab's chariot toward Jezreel, unaware that the greatest spiritual storm of his life was about to break. As rain poured across the land, washing away 3 years of drought, the prophet felt victorious. But inside the palace, another storm gathered. Ahab, still shaken by the fire on Carmel, told Jezebel what had happened, how Elijah had defeated and executed her prophets. Rage burned in her eyes. Feeling her authority insulted and her gods humiliated, she sent Elijah a message dripping with venom. "May the gods punish me if by this time tomorrow I do not do to you what you did to them." When the message reached Elijah, exhaustion made him vulnerable. Terror, irrational but powerful, washed over him. The man who had faced hundreds on Carmel now fled into the wilderness, leaving his servant behind, driven by fear he could not explain. After days of wandering, he collapsed under a broom tree, overwhelmed by despair. With tears and a trembling voice he cried, "Enough, Lord, take my life. I am no better than my ancestors." All the triumphs, the fire, the miracles, they now felt distant, like fading memories swallowed by loneliness. Elijah fell asleep, wishing never to wake. But God had not abandoned him. A gentle touch stirred him from sleep. Before him stood an angel, radiant and calm, saying, "Arise and eat." Beside him were warm bread and fresh water. Elijah ate, then slept again. The angel woke him a second time. "Arise, for the journey ahead is long." Strengthened, Elijah understood his mission was not over. Something deeper than fear now moved him forward. For 40 days and nights he walked through silent, barren wilderness until he reached Mount Horeb, the same mountain where God had spoken to Moses. There, in a dark cave, Elijah wrestled with sorrow and confusion. He felt alone, unheard, and defeated. Then came a question, soft as breath. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" With a heavy heart, he answered honestly, "I have been zealous for the Lord, but the Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and killed your prophets. I alone am left, and now they seek my life." God did not respond with immediate words. Instead, he invited Elijah to stand on the mountain. A fierce wind shattered nearby rocks, but God was not in the wind. An earthquake shook the ground, but God was not in the earthquake. A consuming fire roared, but God was not in the fire. Finally, after all the noise, came a stillness so deep it felt alive. In that gentle whisper, Elijah felt God's true presence, calm, tender, and steady. It wasn't the fire on Carmel or the power that stopped the rain. It was the quiet voice that reached into the deepest parts of his fear. Elijah covered his face in reverence. Then the whisper spoke again. "Return, Elijah. You are not alone. I have reserved 7,000 in Israel who have not bowed to Baal." Relief flooded Elijah's heart. His loneliness had been a shadow, not a truth. God had preserved a remnant, a hidden army of faithful hearts. And now God would lead him to the next step of his calling. God directed Elijah to seek out a young man named Elisha, a man who would walk beside him, learn from him, and one day carry his mantle. Strengthened by God's whisper, Elijah left the cave with renewed resolve. His journey was far from over, but he would not face it alone. What awaited him, companionship, miracles, and a legacy that would outlast him, began with the quiet assurance that God was with him not only in the fire, but also in the silence. The fear that once paralyzed Elijah dissolved like mist rising at dawn. In its place burned a quiet certainty. God had never abandoned him, not even in the moments when darkness felt overwhelming. Strengthened by that truth, he set out toward the fertile valley of Abel Meholah, the place where God was directing him to find the one who would carry on his prophetic mission, a young man named Elisha. When Elijah reached the green plains, he saw Elisha working diligently in the field, guiding 12 yoke of oxen with skill and determination. There was something striking about him, strength, yes, but also purpose, humility, and a steady spirit. Elijah understood immediately why God had chosen this man. Without speaking, the prophet walked toward him, wrapped in his familiar mantle. Elisha sensed a presence behind him and turned. The moment their eyes met, something deep and spiritual passed between them, a silent acknowledgement of destiny. Then Elijah cast his mantle, the symbol of prophetic calling, over Elisha's shoulders. Time seemed to pause. Elisha felt the weight of the mantle, understanding intuitively that his life had just changed forever. Surprised yet willing, he looked at Elijah and said, "Let me first say goodbye to my father and mother, and then I will follow you." Elijah nodded and replied gently, "Go and return. Just remember what I have done to you." Elisha went back, but not to hesitate, only to honor his family and close the chapter of his old life. He slaughtered the oxen, used the wooden plow to cook the meat, and shared a final meal with the people he loved. It was a symbolic act, a declaration that he would not return to his former ways. Then, with courage and conviction, Elisha followed Elijah, not simply as a student, but as one committed to learning every word, movement, and truth from the great prophet of Israel. Their days together unfolded through long journeys, heartfelt conversations, and moments thick with spiritual weight. Elijah spoke of the miracles he had witnessed, the battles he had endured, and the relentless struggle against idolatry. Elisha listened intently, allowing Elijah's wisdom to shape his own heart and purpose. Yet even as the bond between them deepened, the nation remained in turmoil. Jezebel's influence continued to spread, and the persecution of God's faithful grew more severe. Elijah understood that the end of his own earthly mission was drawing near. He had one final responsibility: to prepare Elisha for the storms ahead. One night, under a sky filled with glittering stars, Elijah opened his heart to his young disciple. "Elisha," he said softly, "the path you have chosen will not be easy. You will face corrupt kings, rampant idolatry, and a people divided. But if you remain faithful, God will use you to do even greater things than I have seen." Elisha felt his heart swell with both fear and determination. He answered with unwavering conviction, "Master, I will follow you to the end. All I ask is a double portion of your spirit." Elijah looked at him with paternal affection. "You have asked for something difficult, but if you see me when I am taken from you, it will be granted." And so the final journey began. They traveled to Gilgal, then Bethel, then Jericho. At each stop, Elijah urged Elisha to stay behind, gently testing his loyalty. But Elisha responded each time with the same vow: "As the Lord lives, and as you live, I will not leave you." Their commitment to one another was unbreakable. Finally, they arrived at the Jordan River. Elijah took his mantle, rolled it carefully, and struck the waters. Instantly the river parted, revealing a dry path. Side by side the two prophets crossed, knowing the moment of farewell was drawing close. On the other side, a thick stillness filled the air, something holy, heavy with expectation. Elijah looked at Elisha with both pride and sorrow. Then suddenly, without warning, the heavens split open in a blaze of glory. A chariot of fire, drawn by horses of fire, descended with breathtaking power. A whirlwind roared around them, pulling Elijah upward. Elisha shouted, trembling with grief and awe, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel." In a flash, Elijah was carried into the heavens, a fiery departure marking the end of an era. As the whirlwind faded, the prophet's mantle drifted down and landed at Elisha's feet. The young disciple knelt, picked it up and pressed it to his chest. The weight of responsibility, the memory of his mentor, and the call of God settled over him all at once. Elijah was gone, but his legacy lived on. Elisha stood not as a grieving student, but as the new prophet of Israel, empowered by the same God who had walked with Elijah through fire, famine, and fear. Elisha's journey was just beginning, and now more than ever he knew he would never walk alone, for the God who had carried Elijah home would be with him in every miracle, every challenge, and every step of the mission ahead. If this story moved your heart, don't forget to subscribe to Kingdom Stories, where faith comes alive through powerful biblical narratives. Like and share this video to help others discover the beauty and truth of God's Word. Your support helps us bring more inspiring stories every week.